Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's Cichlids and Coffee live stream. And thank you so much for tuning in. I have a lot to cover today, and I am going to go ahead and get rolling here. And give me just 1 second to set one thing up here. I'm going to mute the computer that I'm monitoring off of so I don't get an echo. The world of live streaming. Okay, very good. So I want to welcome those of you who are here and the early birds. Zen Ginger, bright and early. James Green. Looks like South African cichlid guy. Hello from the UK. Hello, UK. Never ceases to amaze me that we get people from all over the world on these streams. Very appreciated. And for some of you, it's an ungodly odd hour. Sometimes it's early in the morning. Sometimes it's late at night for some of you. So Julian Delgado, good morning to you. And Daryl. Hello, Daryl. Brik for Brik. Hello, welcome back. Po Siwi. Hello, Po Siwi. Po Siwi. And Stephen Schult, Fishy Biz Aquatics, hello my friend. Hello Candi, and Sean, and everybody else. I'm going to get rolling here. I really appreciate you folks jumping on. First off, as usual, I want to give a shout out to some of the, to some folks, and certainly to my moderators, Kevin Green. Not sure if he'll be here today. He does have some things going on that he's taking care of. But if he's here, Kevin, thank you so much. Denny and Dennis Rudell, and of course the amazing Candi. I am everywhere overhauls. The ninja of live stream moderators, Candi. And last week's Super Chats. I want to do a shout out to last week's Super Chats. Brik for Brik, thank you, Brik for Brik. Duke City Aquariums, thank you so much. Gurvinder Parmar, I just call him GP because I hate butchering his name, but I think I'm saying it right. Cesar Sosa, thank you so much, my friend. Brew Monster, love that name. And Edgar Ibarra, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Thank you so much for the Super Chatters last week. And I'd like to just remind you, last week we were doing the whoever breaks the Super Chat record gets a coffee cup. And it looked like Duke City was going to get it. And at the last minute, GP, Gurvinder came in with a $25 Super Chat. So he gets the coffee cup. And thank you so much, Gurvinder, if you're on. And that is in route to you. And this is, so this week, if you have the highest Super Chat and it breaks the record of 25, and you're in the U.S., because we've got to look at shipping costs, you do get a one of these cups, one of these coffee cups. You can have the official coffee and cichlids, and that's the end of the commercial. So let's see here. What have I been up to? I've been up to some fun stuff. Did some of you folks catch that fish store tour down in San Diego? That place, it just blew me away, and the owner of it, Ron, is not even started yet. He has a back wall that is enormous, and if you watch towards the end of the video, you'll see the plumbing that he already has in place. He's going to put another wall of tanks, and I told him, listen, you send me a text as soon as, send me an email when that wall is up, because I'm going to go back there and do an update. But what a great setup. He's always wanted to have a fish store, and went into semi-retirement and jumped in. And at any rate, it was great. It was a great tour. I really enjoyed it. The quality and the quality and the selection of the fish. Oh my God! In the video, I mentioned that if you had a tank that was already cycled and ready to go, you could walk in there and walk out with, let's say, 15 very sought after cichlids, and you'd have your tank underway. You'd like this, instead of like me and so many people over the years, you know, you score a fish here, you score a fish there, you know, you find one for sale, and you do all these things, and you finally have your tank together. You could go into Aquarium Fish Depot and walk out with the ideal set of fish. It was amazing. I really enjoyed it. So so I've been doing some fish tours, and those who follow the channel also know that I had a recent change in the hierarchy back here. Last week, you were entertained by a battle royale that was going on, and something very interesting happened. I did the water change, and you know, when you do water changes, someone told me that the theory is that when you do a water change, it emulates or it mimics the rainy season or something in the lakes of Malawi or something. There's something genetically wired in these fish, and when you do a water change, they fire up. They get excited. You know, they go into breeding. You know, they start thinking about breeding. They start thinking about you know, the eye biter was running the roost. I mean, he was keeping everybody corralled, and he was chasing and just being an overall jerk to everybody, not just the Venusis, but to everybody. And boy, after that water change, something clicked in the brain of that Venusis, and it was like a moment of self-realization. He said, "Wait a minute, I'm way heavier, way bigger than this guy, and why am I putting up with this?" And fortunately, and this is a tip for those of you who keep African cichlids, if you do a water change, don't do a water change and run. One of the comments under the video was that one person had done a water change and then left immediately for work, and came back, and some fish were dead. They'd been just killed, and you could tell by the sides of the fish, you know, missing scales, and the dorsal and tail, you know, nipped like crazy. They could tell it was a battle. You know, the scars around the lips from the lip locking. These fish had been taken out. They've been killed. So when you do a water change, do it so that you have a little time to kind of hang out and make sure that somebody hasn't gone you know, to crazy town. And at any rate, the Venusis absolutely like fired up, realized that I don't need to take this from this skinny punk, and proceeded to deliver a whooping. Now, you know, you're probably wondering, why didn't you film this? It would have been like epic footage. I'm telling you, it was so fast and so intense and violent that I was riveted. I was completely riveted. I did have like a nanosecond thought of grabbing a camera, but I really couldn't. I really couldn't get away and get the camera. I had to stay there and really watch it. And at one point, the Venusis grabbed the lower jaw of the eye biter, and I was almost positive that lower jaw was going to be ripped off. The force that the Venusis had. And also, at another point, the Venusis, whose mouth is much larger, grabbed the entire mouth of the eye biter, had the front of the eye biter's head in his mouth, and was just giving him a real shaking. And at any rate, so I had to stick my hand in the tank. I was like a wrestling or, you know, an MMA ref. I was sticking my hand in the tank and like, okay, break it up, go back to your corners, you know, and boy, and as soon as I break it up, they would come right back together again. And it was really interesting watching the the behavior, the battle behavior that these fish have. The eye biter would maneuver and get over the Venusis and strike downward, and they say that's part of why they're so thin. They're sort of like, you know, death from above, right? And whereas the Venusis was a direct frontal attack and a side attack, hitting him really hard on the sides. I actually saw scales break off and float around the tank, and a frontal attack for the lip lock. So it was a very exciting moment. And, you know, if you saw the video, you know I had these things going through my head. Well, I've got this Venusis that I love, that I picked up 3 for $10 at the local fish store, and this is the male I grew out, versus this other fish that with shipping and everything came out to about $100. What am I going to do here? Kind of stuff you think about. And thank goodness it calmed down, and now the Venusis is back in charge, and things are relatively calm as they're going to be in a large, an African cichlid tank with large fish in it. There's still going to be chases, but it's not going to be the constant harassment that the eye biter was delivering, which would have ultimately resulted in my either having to rehome him and probably fish becoming sick because of the constant stress. Fish tend to carry things around with them that their immune systems can keep in check, but under stress, those immune systems they just can't handle it, and all of a sudden you have something occur, disease, parasites, things of this nature. So that's what I've been up to, and I've also been watching other channels, and I stopped by and watched Scott over at the King and Queen of Cichlids, and it was a little bit funny to me to hear somebody else talking about having had technical glitches in I guess his prior live stream. They lost signal, things of that nature, and I was just, tell me about it. I mean, I was definitely there not that long ago, and this Wi-Fi can go down any time, and then you feel like an idiot. You're scrambling around, trying to get the signal back up. People are leaving the stream, and anyway, so I really understood. And let me tell you, he's got some gorgeous South American. He's got one of the most beautiful dove eyes I've ever seen. He's got some big monster fish, incredible arowanas, and just some beautiful combinations of fish. So that's a King and Queen cichlids. And I also stopped by John, John, and over at the KG Tropicals, and they had a whole live stream about trolls. And thank you, Denny, so much. I appreciate it. I appreciate when you guys support the channel. John was talking about trolls, and I tell you, it just amazes me that, look, it's one thing to say, hey, you know what, I don't agree that you should use salt that way, or I don't agree that you should set up your filtration that way. And this is why. This is what I do, and it's worked for me, and this is why I don't agree with you. That's different. That's okay. That's engaging. That's expressing an opinion that you can then respond to. But when someone just gets on and calls somebody the F word, and tears them a new one, and just attacks him, those folks have really probably no life. And I think someone described him 2 live streams ago that described him as Cheeto fingers living in their mother's basements. So that's my opinion on those people. But anyway, so John and Lisa just sort of turned the whole thing around and just said, okay, well, you guys probably think we're not going to read these comments because of what you said. I'm going to go ahead and embrace it. And he just put it out there and just showed that, hey, look, you know what? Sticks and stones, man. Sticks and stones. Break my bones. Your words, you know the saying. I also stopped by IFG, and IFG has got so many projects going on. Evan Alexander, IFG, the inquisitive fish guy, one of my favorite fish keepers, somebody who stepped up and encouraged me initially to get in front of the camera and do more YouTube work, and also helped me when I got into a few jams with my fish. He would always respond right away and help me out. Good guy, really good guy. But boy, he's into so much stuff now. He's into turtles, and he's got the outside pond, and he's got oddball fish, and he's got trips to fish stores, and it's just amazing what he's got going on. IFG, check out his channel. And at any rate, the truth is, on Facebook, if you're not reinventing yourself, or not even reinventing, but always coming up with something new, some kind of a hook, it's amazing how fast you can become irrelevant. To stay relevant, you really have to have good stuff coming out. You have to be out there doing things, and And at any rate, he definitely has a lot of projects going on, and his channel has blown up, and I'm so happy for him because he is a good-hearted individual. So let's talk a little bit about, let's get into the topic. And we have, what, 68 people on the stream I showed? Okay, welcome to all of you. For those of you who arrived a little late, welcome to all of you. And thank you again for that super chat. I really appreciate that. And so let's talk about my 3 biggest fish keeping mistakes. And some of you have heard about these, I guess, in the past, if you've been a fan of the channel for a long time. And one of the things that, hey, Cichlid Shack, buddy, bad news, your eye biter is no longer in charge. So there you have it. You don't have to take them back. I'm just picking on you. So the first mistake that really stands out, that stands out in my mind is waking up one morning and going to the tank and seeing a lot of dead fish. And if you've had this happen to you, and I hope you haven't, I really sincerely hope you haven't, but if it has happened to you, you know what I'm talking about. There's that moment of panic, like what the hell's going on? What's happening here? I need an answer. I hope you're having coffee, and I hope you're having it in one of these mugs. Shameless plug. So I go out to the tank, and I have about 6 large fish that are belly up, including a Fusco that I had raised, that I'd brought up from a small fry and had turned into a spectacular Fusco. I still have not seen a Fusco like this. He had red, like bits of red in his body. He was just a gorgeous fish. If you go back to some of my old videos, you can see him. Gorgeous fish. I love the way they look, even when they're fries. When they're fried, they have the markings on their bodies, just gorgeous. And he was gone. A beautiful German red was gone. A big Benga Sunshine that I had grown out was gone. Just a lot of them were just gone. And what had happened is I had watched a video the night before, and they had talked about creating a circular motion in the tank. They had recommended that you should set things up, power heads, outputs, so that you have the water moving in a circular motion. I thought, man, that makes kind of sense. So I adjusted outputs in the canister filters. Excuse me. And so what I ended up doing is eliminating the surface tension breakup of the water, which reduced the oxygen level immediately. And the fish that needed the most oxygen, which were the larger fish, died off first. And the smaller fish with the smaller oxygen requirements ended up making it. So I had about maybe 5 or 6 fish that made it. So that was a bad mistake. 2 things. One, it wasn't really thought out. I wasn't really conscious or thinking about, surface tension breakup, oxygenation in the tank. It had never been an issue, and so it wasn't really on my radar, and it should have been. 1. And 2, again, kind of getting back to a comment I made earlier about water changes, I shouldn't have done a major change in the tank right before going to bed, so that I wouldn't be able to see really how the fish react to it. Because if I had been awake for just another hour, or maybe 2 hours, I would have seen that the fish were at the top of the tank. They would have been gasping for air. They would have been, and that would have, their mouths would have been working, and that tells you we have an oxygen issue. I look at tanks sometimes on YouTube. I see the fish, they're working their mouths, and if they haven't just been fed, if they haven't just been involved in a chase and they're panting or something, if it's just just a normal drifting around the aquarium and they're working their mouths, chances are you are not oxygenating enough, and you need to have more surface tension breakup, maybe add an air stone, and certainly circulate the tank, because oxygen can be at the bottom, or rather at the top is where the oxygen is. That water is evaporating. So if you're heating the tanks, especially this time of year, we plug in our heaters, and you're going to get warmer water, more evaporation of the oxygen-rich water, and so you're going to need more oxygen in your tank. So just be conscious of that. I wasn't, and it cost me. And the other takeaway from that was, if you do a major change in your tank, any kind of change, decor, water change, addition of fish, a difference in outputs, things of this nature, definitely hang around for a little bit and watch what's going on. And you will not get blindsided the way I did. It was weird because, 5 or 6 fish were dead, and the other fish were okay. And so it was real hard to read what was happening, because how come everybody isn't dead? If there was some chemical in the water, wouldn't they all be dead? And then, after I thought about it, I realized, okay, as soon as these die, then there's enough oxygen. They die off until there's enough oxygen for the remaining fish to live. So at first, it's very, very perplexing, because the first thing you're thinking is, I got some poison in my tank or something. So, but then why isn't everybody dead? So at any rate, realize that you'll have a partial die-off. Then the remaining fish will be able to live on whatever it is you have going on. And if you don't solve the problem, as those fish put on size, eventually you'll run into it again. So if you have a partial die-off, be sure you have enough oxygenation going on. That was my takeaway on that one. The second biggest fish keeping mistake, and you know what, there's a lot more than 3, but I'm going to limit the self-deprecation. I'm going to limit the self-abuse. I'm only going to talk about 3 of them. But number 2 is rushing the quarantine process. And this happened when I picked up some fish from a store in Southern California, whose name I'm not going to mention because I don't want to associate them with this, because at the end of the day, it was my mistake. And I brought some fish in. There were some situations going on in the quarantine tank. I pulled one out too quickly and added it to a tank, and I introduced Colomaris. I then saw that a fish had torn up lips. I thought that was because there was lip locking going on. So I took the fish that I thought was doing the lip locking out of that tank and moved them to another tank, thinking that would solve the aggression, and cross-contaminated and delivered Colomaris to that tank. So then I had the tanks. The fish started to look like fungus. It started to look like rot. It started to look like rot, fin rot, and fungus. And I went through the whole, the Pima and the Melafix. I went through that whole routine, which of course did nothing for Colomaris. Absolutely nothing. All it did was let the Colomaris, get stronger, and ended up, killing off more fish. And again, that was my misdiagnosis. Ultimately, I was able to get my hands on a kind of a full spectrum antibiotic made by Fritz Aquatics, and it was a what they call a gram-negative antibiotic. I think maybe Furon 2 would have worked. There are other good antibiotics out there, but it needed a strong antibiotic. I also ordered antibiotics off of Amazon or eBay that were infused in the food. And so, yes, Zen Ginger, Maricin. And it's getting harder and harder to get. I'm not even sure if Fritz makes it anymore because of some federal regulations on what can be sold over the counter, which is kind of silly. As if we were taking this fish medicine home and taking spoonfuls of it when we have a fever or something. Maybe somebody was doing that. I wasn't. So yeah, Marison stopped it cold. I mean, it still took a couple days just for the last few bits of it to work its way through, and then it stopped. Now I feel very, very, very happy. I mean, I can't be happy. It was very devastating, actually, but happy that only 50% of my fish died. That may sound crazy, but if you've ever watched videos posted by people who have been through colomaris, they will talk about a complete stock die-off where they lose every single fish. That is the normal thing you hear about when somebody posts a video about colomaris. So going back and looking at the whole thing, in some ways, one, it was a learning experience. Have meds on hand, because it did take me a little time to get the right meds. Have meds on hand, number one. Number two, know the signs of different diseases. And number three, probably most importantly, stick to your quarantine regimen when you're introducing fish from a shop or a location that you have no familiarity with or experience with. And that was my case. I brought home some fish that I thought were going to do great, and when I bought them, they had a little bit missing on their tail, and I thought they had just been nipped. I said, that's okay. I'll bring them home. They'll get better. Well, that was already the beginning of some rot that they had going on, and so I just didn't read that, and I brought them home. So that was number two, and the takeaway was never, stick to your quarantine. Definitely have meds on hand. Okay, I keep Furon. I keep Furon in the house. I have boxes of it. I keep General Cure. I have a big container of it that I picked up from Cichlids. I also have Cordon Ick Attack, the Cordon Ick Attack product, which I like a lot. It's worked whenever I've had to use it, and of course salt. You gotta have some good, like some Morton salt or kosher salt, inexpensive, and they do exactly what your aquarium salts will do, and have some of that. One tablespoon for every 5 gallons, and that can help a lot, unless you have salt-sensitive critters in your tank. Number three was something that cost me some sleep, almost drove me to drinking, and that was the setting up of a sump, trying to do it intuitively, with what seemed to make sense, without really doing a lot of front-end research. But I had an opportunity to sell the old 135. Somebody said, look, I'll buy the 135. So I had to immediately set up the 150 that I had purchased, and the one back here, and that I got for an absolute steal on Craigslist. I paid a lot of money, good sum to get it cleaned up, and I had to stain the stand, but $400 for a 150-gallon tank, a full sump system, 2 pumps, and what else did he have in there? A skimmer that I've never used, and anyway, it was just a crazy deal. I couldn't pass it up, and I had an opportunity to sell the 135. They'd come and take it, and I said, okay, that's fine, take it, and I jumped into it, and I couldn't sleep. I mean, I kept thinking at any moment my sump is going to overflow. I have wood floors. I'm leasing this house. I'm going to end up having to pay $10,000 in water damage. And anyway, so I slept with one eye open. And every time I'd hear water move, going down the overflow box here, every time I'd hear water move down that box, I would think, oh no, it's pouring out on the floor, and I'd get up and I'd... When you finally get a sump dialed in, it's amazing. It's the most incredible thing in the world, because it requires very little. It just runs. It adds tremendous water volume. It dilutes nitrates. Anyway. It makes this 150 a 180 or a 190 because of the extra water volume. So at any rate, hey Brian, thank you for popping in, buddy. I love you the way you support the channel. And folks, if I don't say hello to all of you or comment, if I start commenting on every one of your comments, I love your comments, and you know I always go back and look at them. But if I don't comment on them immediately, it doesn't mean I don't like you, okay? It just means I'm just talking about what I'm talking about, okay? So there you go. So thank you, Jameson. So those were the three, and you know, the takeaway on that is try to know before you go. You know, try and know before you go. As I said in the last live stream, there's no excuse these days for not knowing before you go, because of the you know, we have in our hands, you know, access to the internet, and you can Google just about anything. I could have Googled a lot of Sump videos and picked up some education, and I didn't. And Duke City, I love people with a sense of humor, you know that. And so, hey, I'm working on a couple videos. I think you guys are going to like them. And you know, I do a follow-up. Did you guys watch? Did you guys and gals watch the video about this product, this poly filter? I think the video was called Voodoo. And I'm doing a side-by-side test, a comparison between this product and this product. Okay, you know I love this product. I've been using it for years. It's awesome. And you know, pinky filters. I cut it. I have it at the top of my fluval. I use squares of it where the sump drains into, you know, where it drains into the sump, and just a great product overall. And this product here is a very good product. I feel I think it does what it's supposed to do. I don't know what they've infused this product with. I really don't. I really don't know what they've infused this product with, because you know, I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag, because then you're not going to go watch the video. But the results of this in the same place as this in just 4 or 5 days is totally different, completely different. So this product is like a high-powered magnet for waste and detritus, and I don't know if it's because it's got some chemical or the way they've created the fiber, the way they've weaved it. I don't know what it is, but man, oh man, it goes black in just a few days, and so it has a very different, in my mind, it has a very different application than a pinky filter. And I'll tell you one thing: I would never put this where it could possibly block a flow, because it does become an obstruction. It does become it will block. I put it directly under the opening. The sump. You have a tube that comes down, and then it drains into this pan, into this drip pan. And so I put a square of that poly, this poly here. I put a square of that right under that hole, and it took maybe 48 hours, and that sump was backed up. It was not draining through. The water level went below. Fortunately, I have an automatic top-off system which completely drained, so that the motor wouldn't burn out. But it backed up, and so it becomes blocked. It does become blocked. So just keep that in mind when you use it, because it's. But I'll tell you, if you have a tank, let's say with shrimp or discus or things of this nature that can be very sensitive, and you want to make sure that you're pulling out nasty things, man, do a 24, 48 hour or a 3-day treatment with this, and you will pull out. You will definitely extract at a very fast level. Also, I'll tell you what I love about this product. This is one thing I absolutely love about it. When you go to treat your tank, and you pull your ChemiPure, you pull your charcoal or your Purigen out of the tank, because you can't have that in there when you're treating. with medication, because it'll absorb the medication. It will not get to your fish. But when you're done medicating, you need to put charcoal in there. And some of you don't want to go out and buy charcoal. Some of you don't like charcoal. You put some of this in there, and it will pick up all the residual medication. So, and that's real easy. Put it in, it'll absorb it all. After a few days, pull it out and throw it away, and you're good to go. So, at any rate, for those of you who arrived late, thank you for joining. We're up to 76, 32 thumbs up. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. It tells me that you are engaged. And so let's talk a little bit. So those were my 3 biggest fish keeping mistakes. I'd like to hear yours. Go ahead and post them. Go ahead and mention them in the comments what your biggest fish keeping mistake was, because you know that one of the themes of this channel is we all learn from each other, and the other theme of that is the stupidest fish keeper is the one who thinks they know it all. That's the stupidest fish keeper. So we all learn from each other. So post your biggest mistake, your biggest error, and I would like to go ahead and talk about it. And I'll probably, if I don't pick it up now, I'll pick it up when I review this live stream, and then go ahead and pick it up next week. So I want to go ahead and take up some of your comments. These are some of the comments that I came across, and these are I want to go ahead and read them to you. And if you hear your name, raise your hand. Okay, so. And someone said, dumbest thing I've ever done is believe cycle in a bottle. Cycle in the bottle. I get it. Yeah. And I hear you. You really have to pay attention when you're cycling, because and there's a great graphic. I don't know if you folks have seen it. There's a great graphic on it, and I'm going to post it in one of my videos. I'm adjusting something here on the computer. Bear with me. So it just shows how you have the ammonia, right? It kind of goes up like a curve. You've probably seen this graph. It goes up like a curve, and then it drops, and then you have the nitrate. The nitrite comes up on a curve, and then it drops to 0, and then you have nitrate, right? Each one of those is like almost like several weeks for each one to take place. And then you end up with the 0, 0, and then like 5 to 10, right? 0 ammonia, 0 nitrite, and maybe 5 to 10 on the nitrate. And so I think the biggest mistake we make in cycling a tank is a lack of patience. Patience. I mean, my goodness, I think I did a whole video one time on patience. And and that was what was behind, to some degree, my mistake with the quarantine that led to the Colomaris and losing 50% of my stock, was a lack of patience. And so it's so important, this hobby, to just take your time and let it run its pace. And then when when it tests out correctly, then go ahead and maybe add a few fish to contribute to the ammonia, and things of this nature. And some people throw dead shrimp. They throw a piece of shrimp in the tank so it'll rot and create ammonia. A lot of different techniques out there. But I'm not entirely convinced that Fritz Turbo or Seachem Stability or any of those can get a tank cycled immediately. I would use various techniques. And okay, so let's talk a little bit about. We had one comment that I liked. Ludwig Johannes Thorsted. Ludwig Johannes Thorsted. Hey Ben, you're the reason I got into peacocks and haps. I now own a 140-gallon aquarium. Man, I love hearing stuff like that. Because one of my original goals in starting my channel was to get people into the hobby and excited about the hobby and advancing in the hobby. And too many people get in, and then they have a few setbacks and losses, and then they abandon it. They have some fish die off, or they do what I used to do. You know what I used to do when I was very young? I would give my tank a real good cleaning. Man, I'd take that filter and I'd scrub it, and I'd put new carbon and I'd put new sponges in there, and I would vacuum and I'd scrub the inside, and I was so proud that I'd done such a good job of cleaning, and the next morning all the fish should be dead. And geez. I was the classic novice fish keeper who has no idea that there's a lot of valuable bacteria living everywhere in that tank. And so I would restart the cycle process every time I would service the tank. I'm talking about when I was 10, 12, So anyway, it was very frustrating. And of course, there was no way to find out unless you went out and used some fish keepers. I got some books, maybe went and got some books and read them and things of this nature. Anyway, Zen, don't forget about your Python running. That'd be a disaster. So Ludwig, thank you so much for that. Aquaballs, one of our favorite YouTube names, Aquaballs. We met at the Coast Fish Club, if you remember. Aquaballs, if you're on the chat, if you're on the stream, were you sitting next to me when we were watching Corey speak? Were you on my right? Or were you one of the folks I met when I was walking around and was talking to Corey and in line with Corey? Was that? I'm just trying to place which one was, And anyway, I went down to the Coast. There's a cichlid club about an hour south of me. I went down there to go see Corey, and that man knows his stuff, I'll tell you. Leslie's Aquatics. Good morning from sunny South Carolina. I love South Carolina, by the way. And AKA the Low Country. Okay, I've enjoyed watching your videos. Thank you for all the info. I feel like I've learned a lot from you. Leslie's Aquatics. Thank you, Leslie. Love that feedback. Duke City Aquariums, I know you're here, so I'm going to read your comment here. I need to get rid of my OB. He is way too aggressive. Well, who doesn't have an OB story? You have these hybrids, OBs, dragon bloods, sometimes albino. They've been bred in a certain way, and sometimes that aggressive trait is enhanced. Now, that being said, I had an OB called the Old Man, who I just loved, a true orange blossom. Right? He was very orange, had some blue in the face, gorgeous fish. Lost him to that Colomaris that I talked about. And I have an OB now that I thought would have a little red, but he's actually turning a bit orange. And they've both been relatively peaceful. They've been now, the OB that I have now was moved from the 60-gallon to the 100 because he was starting to assert himself and chasing the red shoulder, chasing the the Jallo reef, the Plastidochromys Jallo reef. And so I did have to move him to graduate him out to the 100. And so they can be that way. They can be what I call jerkfish. And sometimes it'll work itself out if you give it time. But if you see a lot of damage, if you start seeing fish who have been nipped very badly, their tails, their tails are in bad shape. They've been hit on the side. You see you see some scales are missing. It's time to pull them out. You got to pull them out. So anyway, I feel you. Aquaballs also asked how often you do sump maintenance on the cichlid tanks. The sump, don't kid yourself. Sumps need maintenance. They're not maintenance free. I would feel confident going away for 2 weeks, even 3, I think, with a sump system, and feel that it would be okay. I wouldn't necessarily feel that way on maybe canister filtered or hang on back filtered aquariums. Going away 3 weeks would be a bit rough. So without having somebody come in, maybe do some partial water changes. But the sumps, I do water changes every week. I vacuum the substrate because even though I have a powerful a powerful high door, moving water across the tank to the overflow and also to the input for the 704B, Sun 704B, there's still a lot of detritus. These fish produce tremendous amounts of waste. And so when I vacuum, you've seen, if you watch some of my, you've probably seen some of my videos where I post when I'm vacuuming this tank. It's amazing what I pull up. So they're just pigs. They're just pigs. They eat voraciously and they poop voraciously. So so every week I do vacuuming and I do a water change, sometimes 50%, but usually a little less for less shock. And I pull water out of the sump. So I pull the water out of the sump, and that means let me rephrase that. The less I mess with the tank, the better, because anytime you mess with the tank, you're creating stress for your fish. I've said that 1,000 times. So, but every week, I swap out the piece of pinky floss that I have under the intake, under the drain before it hits the pan. I take that sponge out, replace it, and maybe every 2 weeks or a month, I'll pull out the matin filters and give them a squeeze in aquarium water because they're full of beneficial bacteria. But I have 2 matin filters under the drip pan so that the water that's going over the media is relatively clean. Then I have a very large, thick matin filter from Swiss Tropicals standing up in the sump, so the water has to go through that, and it's full of beneficial bacteria. So no, sumps are not maintenance free. They do require maintenance. I'm not that concerned about nitrates. I have a lot of stuff working on nitrates. And by the way, I have now a little shrimp cleanup crew in the sump, and you can see them. They position themselves directly in the flow, in the stream, and they're bamboo shrimp, and so and their fans are constantly going, and they're constantly eating from the stuff that might have gotten through, and every now and then I'll sprinkle a little food in the sump, just a little bit, just to give them something, a little treat. But the bamboo shrimp are very cute, and they're living in the sump now. So Dave Hibbard. Hi Ben, I live in Glendora, pretty close to you. Other than CK Fish in Covina, what other stores do you recommend? I might have taken this up, I think, in the last stream. I have a local fish store playlist. Dave, check that out. Local fish store playlist. I think Candi might have already shared it, and it has my favorites in the area. Nolan, I love Nolan's Aquarium. Of course, CK that you mentioned, I love them. I found some great fish at a little hole in the wall called Glendale Tropical. They have some great cichlids, and they're always changing, so they always get new stuff in. And but boy, if you ever can drive south and get over to that Aquarium Fish Depot, oh my God. So, but check out that playlist. Jose Santiago, Ben, I have a question. How do I reduce GH in my aquarium? Okay, you're talking about hardness. And GH, when you see people talking about GH, you're talking about calcium and magnesium. Those two things, calcium and magnesium in the tank. And I would never want to reduce it in my tank, only because these fish love hard mineralized water. They love it. That's something that Malawis love. But and so I've never had to do that. So what I did is I did a little research for you, Jose, and I'm going to read something to you. Hard water can be softened by diluting it with distilled water or RO water. Reverse osmosis, or whatever it's called. Okay, RO water. So buy distilled water. Go get a couple gallons of distilled water. When you do a water change, put distilled water in there, and that will dilute it. Don't use things that will add minerals to the tank, like limestone, holy rock, aragonite substrate, or anything that will add calcium and magnesium into the tank. Don't use anything like that in your decor. And also, you know, the GH will go down if you extend the gap between water changes, because minerals will settle. They eventually settle. This is one of the reasons why you want regular water changes with your Malawi fish, because the minerals will settle down and the hardness, the water will become a little soft, your pH can crash. So, you know, when you do your water changes, you remineralize, you resuspend minerals. And so if your nitrates allow for it, let's say you have a very planted tank and your nitrates are being consumed by your plants, then you could extend the time between water changes, and that will allow the GH to go down. But the addition of distilled water that you can pick up pretty much anywhere, or if you have an RO system, adding some RO water, maybe with a drip system, that will reduce the GH in your tank, okay? And by the way, I got a shout out to Shelley Wittig, Fish Gal. She wrote an article, and if you haven't read this article, I recommend this to everybody who keeps fish. This article is called Practical Water Chemistry. Practical Water Chemistry. And it is, you can find it at Cichlid-Forum. Doesn't matter if you keep cichlids or any kind of fish. Practical Water Chemistry, written by Shelley Wittig, Fish Gal, at Cichlid-Forum.com. And I recommend that article to anybody who keeps fish. Great article. Really good. Simple. She put it in, you know, in the terms that even a caveman like me can understand. Another comment from Leslie's Aquatics. If you're wanting to sell your fish to a local fish store, how would you approach that conversation with the owner? Leslie, I've never sold fish. I've gotten some credit. They've given me some store credit. They've never bought from me. They've never offered to buy fish from me. I've never had them turn me down when I walk in with a bucket. One time I had an Uratus that was very violent. Went from a beautiful yellow with a black stripe, and then one morning was all black and got real chunky and just started beating everybody up. And I took him to the local fish store, and thankfully he took him off my hands. And then he gave me, like, I think, I don't know, a little store credit that I could apply towards some supplies that I needed. Otherwise, you know, go on, if you post a picture of your fish on Craigslist, go ahead and, you know, you can sell them that way. And the way I've done it on Craigslist is I'll have the person PayPal me some money, because I'll tell them, look, I've got to know you're serious. And so before I go into the tank and, you know, lower the water level, remove decor, put in a separator so I can corral the fish and catch them so you can come pick them up, send me a good faith payment, like half of it, and give me the other half when you get here, you know, and you know, when you like the fish. Otherwise, you know, Craigslist can be sketchy. You don't want some. But I've found all the people that I've met through Craigslist that have been involved in fish, whether they've sold me a tank or fish or bought fish from me, every single one was fun, was friendly. Every single one was a cool gal or guy. And, you know, I mean, we're fish keepers. I mean, come on. How many serial killer fish keepers are there? I mean, not that many. All right. Rob Shannon, what would happen if you dropped a full-grown Abuna in that tank? How would that affect the eye biter? Rob, we will never know the answer to that. It would probably turn into a battle royale, and a full-grown, you know, Abuna would want territory, would want to claim the rocks there, or maybe the rocks here, as their territory, and it would get into a battle right away. And so I would not try that. The large Mbuna that I've had, I had a yellow lab, and he got very big, very chunky, and I ended up having to give him away. He just became very violent, very hard on some peacocks that I had, and I ended up, rehoming him. I also had a yellowtail, beautiful blue with a yellowtail, and he was mellow. He was okay, but even towards the end, even he started to get nippy. I had a Pseudotropheus, beautiful Pseudotropheus, gorgeous fish, but he was, man oh man, when it was time to feed the fish, he would clear out the whole tank, get everybody on the edges of the tank, and then he would eat, and then when he was full, he would go away and everybody else would eat. And anyway, ended up rehoming him too. So let's see here. Steve's Aquatics. What's the name of the shop in San Diego? I might want to go. Okay, I think Candi's already posted that video, and it is the Aquarium Fish Depot, right off the 5 freeway. Aqua Balls said that planted tanks should be just for plants, not for fish. Well, I don't know. I would disagree with you on that, only because I've seen some gorgeous planted tanks with small fish running around. I think it's a great accent to a planted tank to have a few neons, maybe a few zebras, a few rasboras in there. So I like the look of a planted tank with a few fish in it, but certainly I've also seen, like in, is it called Green Machine, and other websites or other YouTube channels, strictly planted tanks that made your jaw drop. I mean, you looked at them and you said, oh my God. And they were just plants. And the green is the way it pops. I mean, they're using CO2 and vitamins, and they have a proper substrate, absolutely gorgeous. So, I could see it both ways, but I happen to like seeing little fish darting in and out of those plants. So, Aqua Balls, we're going to have to agree to disagree. Still love you. Bill German, how often do you feed the Spirulina 20? Once a week. Once a week, I put, you're right, don't put cichlids in with those plants or you'll have a shredded plants. Once a week, I give these fish Spirulina, and because I do have fish that need some veggies in their diet, and I also feel that it helps the predators, the carnivorous fish. I do feel that it helps them to clean out their digestive system and to put some plants in there. And so once a week, I drop the flakes, and boy, they love them. They go after them like crazy. They love the Spirulina, the Zoomed Spirulina. Whatever Spirulina you choose to use, that's your call. I use Zoomed, and the fish love it. Rob Shannon, words of wisdom, don't over clean, ! We commented on that already, Rob. Certainly a lot of people have been through the thinking they're doing the right thing and killing off all their fish because they over cleaned. It's a tough lesson to learn, but those are words that should be chiseled in stone in the front of every aquarium store in the country. Do not over clean your tank. Ask me why. Michael Nicholas, I was thinking about creating a storage tote tank just to put biological media, add some goldfish to it. Question is, would I need to have a level of oxygen in that tank as well as temperature? I don't know. I don't know if the plants, if they're very temperature sensitive. I would imagine if you're in an area where the outside tote could freeze, we have freezing temperatures, I imagine, yeah, that could be a problem. So you might need a heater, yes, or keep it in a place where it doesn't quite get as cold as outside. Regarding oxygen, yeah, I think oxygen is important for all living things. But interestingly enough, your plants remove carbon dioxide and add oxygen. So not sure how vital that is, but since your goal is to have bacteria living on the media that you then can move into your tanks, yes, oxygen is important. Your beneficial bacteria, your aerobic beneficial bacteria, different from the anaerobic that lives deep in the media and thrives with less flow. But your aerobic needs oxygen. This is why I suggest when you're cycling a tank, have your bubblers running, have your, be breaking up the surface tension, because that will help with the cycling process. Okay, so be adding oxygen to your tank even when you're cycling a tank, because it'll promote the beneficial bacteria. So I hope that answers your question. And James Rutherford chimed in, goldfish need no heater, but the air stone, however, not necessary is always a good idea. Yeah, I would agree. I'd agree with James Rutherford. Ruben Rivera Jr., I have a question. If I just put a regular sponge floating in my tank in the 125 for a few weeks, will it build up some beneficial bacteria? Yes. Yes. Everything you see behind me has beneficial bacteria going on. The plants, the decor, the substrate, the back, the universal rocks background, all of it has beneficial bacteria. So anything you put in there eventually is going to get some beneficial bacteria growing on it. And there are people who keep sponges, they keep rings in a bag, things of that nature, and they just tuck it in a corner where it can't be seen, and they just let it sit there in the tank. And if they need to set up a tank real quick, they just pull that out, and there you go. Same thing with sponge filters. You drop a sponge filter, and you will have something with beneficial bacteria in no time, and that sponge filter can help you to rapidly set up a quarantine tank or a timeout tank or a tote. Doesn't even have to be a tank. It could be a bucket. You drop a sponge filter in a bucket, drop a fish in there. Okay. So hope that answered your question. John Berg, different nets, cleaning supplies, etc. for each tank, or do you have specific process for cleaning after each use? What John is talking about is cross-contamination. This can be a problem, and if you watch enough YouTube videos, you're going to come across somebody talking about how a diseased tank cross-contaminated another tank. I did it with fish, and I'm sure using the same net didn't help either earlier in today's live stream when I talked about Colomaris. So cross-contamination can be a problem. So there are some people that have a set of nets for each tank, and they have a python for each tank. Certainly if you have 10 tanks, that could get expensive, maybe impractical. When I'm done with my vacuuming, I run boiling water, not boiling, but very, very hot water through the python. And I let it run for several minutes for two reasons. One, I want to kill off anything in there. And two, I want the python very soft so that when I roll it up, I can roll it up very easily. It's not fighting me, trying to get into a different shape. So it rolls up very neat, very tight. And so that's the only process I have. I do have different nets in different cabinets that I go to. And so I try not to cross-contaminate with nets. And how concerned should you be about that when every tank is healthy? I don't know. I mean, all it takes is one instance and you're off to the races. So Michael Nicholas, not sure if you're here, but Ben, I have a 125-foot, 6-foot tank, currently housing 3 Venusis, 1 Sandiver, 1 Strigatus, thinking of adding a Livingstone and Fusco. My fish are all juvies. What would you recommend? And is that too many? I don't know, they're all juvies. They're going to grow up together. You could actually have, they could go along nicely and live well together. I think eventually one of those Venusis are going to assert themselves. I had to get rid of the 2 that I had together with this one when this one became obviously dominant. I had to pull out one of the Livingstonies from the 60 and put it in the 100 because he had become the dominant Livingstone and was harassing the other 2. So I don't know. I'm not sure if that's something you could try it and it'll work. Here's the most honest advice I'll give you. It'll work, and as long as it's working, and then it'll work until it doesn't work. And then at that point, you would have to take steps. You'd have to rehome with some of those fish, or you might get lucky and end up having some fish that establish a pecking order when they're very young and stay in that pecking order. Down the road, adding fish to that combination could be difficult because you're going to have some very dominant, very aggressive fish. The Nimbochromis, Nimbochromis family, Venusas, your Fuscos, your Livingstonies, not so much your Linnies. They can be a little nuts, you know. John Barrett, I think you're on the chat now, John, and you asked this last week, and you mentioned how it was a shame that I didn't answer your question. I just want you to know, John, that sometimes I don't get to everybody's questions. I can't. It's just something I can't do. I just can't get to everybody. Don't take it personally. It doesn't mean I'm intentionally ignoring you, okay? I also get this on social media. Sometimes somebody will send me a message, and because I didn't get back to them right away, they start sending exclamation marks and, hey, what's going on? And at any rate, sometimes I can't get back to you. I'm sorry, I just can't. But John, to answer your question, I honestly don't know a lot about this fish, this Yaru fish. I know that Joey, the king of DIY, I think his handle on Instagram is Yaru Joey or Joey Yaru or something like that. But he was really into him at one time. They're beautiful. I did go take a look at them after reading your comment. I went and looked up this fish. They're gorgeous. They're referred to sometimes as the poor man's discus. They have beautiful markings. Their eyes get very red when they're in a breeding dress. They can get up to 10 inches. So they can end up being very big, and not just in length, they're very tall. And so they're a big, bulky fish. Not sure how many of them you'd want to have in a 125. Probably not more than probably 2 or 3. And I don't know how they get along with each other, but I have a website for you. I want you to go check this out. And write this down. AZ, like Arizona. AZ, apple zebra, gardens, like flower gardens. azgardens.com/product/Yaru and then -Cichlid and then /. Great information there on that particular fish, the Yaru. Great pictures, and hey, I hope that helps. I hope that helps you, okay? I really try not to comment too much on topics I don't know anything about. A rule to live by. Okay, so listen, that's we're up to the hour. I want to thank those of you who super chatted, and your support of the channel is noticed and definitely appreciated. Those of you who ask questions on this super chat, I will go ahead and definitely address them next week. I will go through them, and I will go ahead and take some of them up because I don't want to use up your entire Saturday. And thank you to my moderators. And I'm not sure if Kevin was able to make it today, but he's appreciated anyway. Dennis, thank you so much, Denny. And thank you so much, the amazing Candi. And thank you, everybody. Those of you who are still on, you are appreciated. I hope you enjoyed this live stream. And be sure to rate, share, comment, and all that good stuff. And goodbye, Danny. Goodbye, Michael. Ollie, I see you. And goodbye to you, Brik for Brik. Duke City, later, my friend. Andrew, I see you. And goodbye. And Danny again. Michael Fuller, Andrew Jones. Okay, thank you, everybody. Okay, you're all very appreciated. You rock, my friends. And you're the ones that make a lot of this worthwhile for me. And I mean that from the heart. Bye-bye.